Donald Trump. Now, there's a lot of concern tonight that that candidate, who's now president-elect, may derail many of the things that California Democrats have fought long and hard for.
Health insurance, climate change protection, gun control, just to name a few. KCAL9 political reporter Bryan joins us now with details on this. Dave.
Yeah, California is probably not Donald Trump's favorite state. In fact, after the vote yesterday, it may be his least favorite state. But will his policies damage California? Well, from killing the bullet train to deporting undocumented immigrants to shutting down Obamacare, California political leaders fear California could be hit hard by the Trump administration. And they're researching potential lawsuits and other actions in response. Less than 24 hours after the victory of President-elect Donald J. Trump became official, California legislative leaders are already fearing the impact a Trump administration could have on crucial programs in the state.
There's a lot of open-ended questions today. The issue of ACA, the health exchange for California, covered California. What happens if he, through a pen, through an executive action, eviscerates the health exchange? And all of a sudden we have tens of millions of Californians who have no quality health care.
In fact, the majority leader in the Republican-controlled Senate indicated dismantling and replacing Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is near the top of the GOP wish list.
It's a pretty high item on our agenda, as you know, and I would be shocked if we didn't move forward. The sooner we can go in a different direction, the better.
But the impact of a Trump administration and a Republican-controlled Congress could go far beyond health care, according to State Senate President Kevin De Leon, if federal funding is cut off for state and local programs.
Lunches for senior citizens, daycare for young mothers, single mothers, our climate change leadership.
Even in Hollywood, which has always been supportive of the Clintons, there is fear and loathing about whether Trump will take his revenge on supporters of progressive politics there, and those who ridicule him, according to Variety senior editor Ted Johnson.
We've seen him go and use Twitter to lash out at shows like Saturday Night Live. Is he going to start, even as president, filing libel suits? Is he going to have this war on the First Amendment and actually, try to change libel laws? Could he have a chilling effect, I guess, on the news media and even the creative media?
And one of the first victims could be the controversial California bullet train, a top priority for Governor Jerry Brown, which state officials now believe will be a prime federal funding target.
Without a question, I believe that that will be on the chopping block for this new Congress and especially this new president.
So what does California do about that? Do we drop the project and just pack up the bags and go home, or what?
Well, we don't pack up our bags and go home. My role, again, is to make sure California is protected, as insulated as possible by any policies at the executive level that may have a harmful impact on everyday Californians.
Immigration could be another funding battlefront. Trump has said he wants to kill federal funds to cities that give sanctuary to undocumented immigrants, which many California cities do.
Block funding for sanctuary cities. We block the funding. No more funding.
The sanctuary policy, I think he can change the enforcement of that pretty much overnight.
Hastings Law School professor Roy Little, a former federal prosecutor, says the Trump administration could attack new laws, too, in states like California, legalizing the recreational use and possession of marijuana.
You can bet Rudy Giuliani is going to come into office if he's the attorney general, and I'm not sure he will be. And this will be first on his plate. There are now how many states that legalize marijuana? This is a big issue.
Now, tonight, State Senate President Kevin De Leon told me he has already ordered a detailed study from legislative attorneys on state programs and projects that could be negatively impacted by funding or legal attacks from the federal government. The study, he said, would include what options would be available for the state to fight back, including legal action against the federal government and perhaps finding some additional state funding to replace federal cutbacks. Guys, back to you.